Definitely don't do this when you do your first 50k. Definitely don't do this.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. In today's video, I would like to share with you how my first ultra trail race went. I did 50k, how I approached it, the race strategy, and especially some of the mistakes I made so that you can avoid them. And trust me, I made many. Ultra Trail del Lago Maggiore was my first attempt at a true ultra trail. Brutal and inspiring. Running 52 kilometers, climbing 3,000 meters up 2 steep mountains along the way. What the f did I get myself into? These were my thoughts midway through the race. It was a super tough, amazing experience in which I pushed myself very hard and in very different ways from previous efforts. And I came home with a lot of lessons learned and useful experiences. I pivoted all the fitness I built for the Ironman World Championship into a mega brief 50k prep. The most important thing was recovering from the Ironman World Championship because it was going to be a fairly fast turnaround to the ultra. So I focused on sleeping, resting and eating, paying attention to really dial in my nutrition. Speaking of nutrition, I am very happy that today's video is sponsored by AG1. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I've been drinking AG1 for the past few months now, and it quickly has become my go-to drink first thing in the morning, every single morning. Since starting drinking it, I've been feeling great with sustained energy throughout the whole day that is allowing me to keep on training hard, even after so many consecutive months of doing high volume endurance training. The main reason I drink it is to ensure my body gets all the foundational elements for gut health, immune support, energy and recovery. AG1 is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, and combines the perfect amount of micronutrients, absorption and taste to get my day started on the right note. Instead of addressing one area of the body, foundational nutrition supplements raise our baseline health by nourishing the whole body, the brain and the gut. I find it to be an effortless daily habit. 1 scoop, 8 ounces of water, it tastes great. The convenient travel packets I find especially useful when traveling to races or events as a way to stick to this routine even when I'm away from home, like right now. Go to drinkag1.com/PatrickDeLorenzi to get started on your order. AG1 is going to give my community a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. For the training aspect leading up to the race, I simply based my overall fitness on the previous months of gravel riding, road running, and focused Ironman prep. I knew that I was fairly fit, but I analyzed the weak spots I would have going into a mountain ultra. Mainly, the climbing and leg strength would be a challenge. I knew from all the Ironman prep that I had the cardio fitness to take on anything 10 to 20 hours long. But the leg strength to climb up and run down mountains, not so sure about that. So after 1 week of full recovery, I resumed training, mostly gearing the running efforts to climbing uphill. To be honest, I routinely included hills and trail running in my training and had done multiple 20+ kilometer trail runs before and one 35 kilometer trail run with 2,000 meters of elevation. So I knew what that felt like. It wasn't something completely novel to me. I trained mostly alone, but I also did a couple of sessions with a friend, a very accomplished ultra runner, Oliviero Alotto. Oliviero has been a key figure in the past months in general because he's a great human friend whose joy for running is contagious to say the least. He gave me great tips on pacing, which being dumb I ended up not taking at all during the race, uphill technique, downhill technique and nutrition. And in general, he was very encouraging to just do it and telling me that I could do it no problem. He really believed in me. I trained with him for 1 session and after seeing me, he was very assuring about the fact that I would have no problem completing the event, which was very helpful to quell the voices of doubt, even though I was sure that I could do it. I also trained on the bike like normal Ironman training basically, to let my legs recover and not beat them up too much. 2 weeks after Ironman Nice, so 1 week before the ultra, I did a 20 kilometer trail race with 1,000 meters of vert and it felt great. I went absolutely full gas. I managed to push quite a bit of intensity, which is usually a very good sign I've recovered from a previous long effort. After the session, I started the taper. So in total, I think I did 7 focused running sessions. Felt great and recovered. Okay guys, so tomorrow's the day. I'm gonna be doing my first ultra marathon. Right now I'm getting all the gear ready and it is a lot of stuff actually. There is a list with mandatory kit that you must have and I would like to show you exactly the gear that I'm packing. Let's start off with the running gear. The first thing that is on the list, of course, is a pair of trail running shoes that are okay for the terrain that we're going to run in. So these are the Hoka Stinson 7. I love these shoes. I used the previous model for more than a year at this point. I've already bought a couple of pairs and I love it. And this is the new model and I absolutely love this shoe. It's like the shoe before, but it's better, it's wider, it's roomier. And has this really plush cushion. Traction is very good, unless you go on really hardcore mud, but tomorrow the weather should be good. So I'm really looking forward to using these shoes, Hoka Stinson 7. Then you need something to carry stuff in. And for that, I'm gonna be using a Salomon trail backpack. So this is the Salomon Sense Pro 10 liter backpack. I've always felt that it's too big for trail running, but actually this time it's gonna be super handy because it has a lot of space for everything that we need to carry. I'm going to be using this to carry everything, plus a little running belt that I'll show you later. And I will be having 2 soft flasks for fluids. This is going to be the basic setup. In this backpack, I'm going to be carrying the mandatory kit. Okay, so I had to get it because it's a lot of stuff. 1 waterproof jacket that I actually had to buy. Just got it yesterday. Very probably I'm not going to use it because the weather's going to be good. 1 pair of gloves. They should be waterproof, so I'm going to get some just plastic gloves to put on top. 1 pair of long pants if it gets really cold. Thing that I don't think is going to happen. So I'm going to be carrying all this stuff, but I'm not really going to use it, I think. And 1 long sleeve shirt, which is basically a base layer. And this actually makes sense to carry it if it does get cold because the race goes up to, I think, 1,500 meters or something like that. Headlamp, because the race is going to be starting early in the morning. So this might be needed for the first few kilometers. I've literally just gotten it at Decathlon. Yeah, hopefully it does its job. I don't think I'll be using it much, but it's mandatory. So I need to carry this. Also with the headlamp, I'm going to have to take a spare battery because you need 2 batteries or 2 headlamps. So I'm going to take 2 of these power banks, which are really tiny, but they're really strong. I'm going to be taking my phone charger, even though I don't think I'll need it, I'm going to be taking it. And these things can work for both the headlamp and the phone charging. Next up, we have the first aid and safety kit. 1 safety blanket, a survival blanket, this is what it's called. Strapping tape, it should be minimum 1 meter. This is 2 meters and it's actually pretty heavy. So I might have to shave it down because this is actually a lot of stuff to carry, to be honest. And another thing that I'll need to carry is a buff like this that can cover the whole head. And if it gets cold, you can put it on your mouth. Then we have nutrition. So I'm going to be carrying a lot of gels, of course. I'm going to be sticking to liquid nutrition, nothing else. So gels. And I'm going to be doing soft flasks with Endurance Energy unit drink in them and then just refill from the aid stations. As a new thing, I'm going to be carrying my phone with me, which is something that I've never done in an event, apart from the test event that I did last week, which was a 21-kilometer trail race. And I'm going to be carrying it in this belt, which I'm going to keep just in front of me right here. And I'm going to put my phone inside here so it doesn't occupy space in the backpack. This is actually one of the first times I'm going to be doing an event and I can bring cameras with me. So I'm going to be taking 2 cameras to film. One is going to be the DJI Osmo Action, which I'm going to stick in the pocket here of the backpack. And I'm also going to be taking my favorite camera of them all, the Insta360 X3 with extra long pole. I think the footage that you can get when running with this is awesome. And we're going to be in some pretty amazing places because the race is in, I think it's 2 national parks and it's like mountains overlooking these lakes. So I think I'm going to get some pretty rad footage. I'm going to try and use my phone as little as possible, but I might shoot something with the phone also. Okay, so now is the time to set up the backpack and see how everything fits in it. And as far as running gear goes, I'm going to be wearing just my Ale t-shirt, pair of super basic and extra light Hoka pants. These are OG Hoka One, not Hoka. Some undershorts with a couple of extra pockets for gels. Some arm warmers for when we start in the morning, because I think it's going to be fairly chilly, but I'm not going to be wearing a jacket, I think. And some Sumapo compression socks. These are absolutely awesome. I've been running with these on trails for the past month, and these are really, really good. In this hat, Sumapo shades, and that is going to be basically the kit for the race. Well, that was definitely the most low-key registration I've ever done, but it's cool, it's cool. The race director was already there explaining stuff and doing the briefing in English, so I've already heard some stuff. Yeah, all the compulsory kit is required, so I did well to get everything, to be honest.
And I'm just getting some carbs in, waiting for the Italian briefing, which is at 5, and then I'm just going to head to bed to sleep. The place here is beautiful though. So the briefing is done. I'm just going to get a couple of things from the supermarket, and then it's going to be time to sleep. And sleep, and hopefully tomorrow wake up full of energy, ready to go. Excited, pretty nervous to be honest. It's a pretty big challenge, but I'm really excited. Okay guys, so we are back in the hotel room. It's a really old school hotel, like 60s, maybe even 50s style hotel. Briefing is done, everything is done. I'm super tired and I really want to go to bed. Now it's time to eat. I have to do another couple of things like check all the gear for tomorrow. We're having rice cakes and ketchup for dinner, and that's gonna be it. Apart from a new tactic, a new thing that I'm gonna try and do, some Oreos. I'm gonna eat some Oreos to see if tomorrow they give me a boost. Try and just put like some junk in there and see if it gives me a boost. This is the most Spartan meal ever. But actually, it's okay. It's not bad. Oreos are real junk. They are so junk. They're basically fake. They're not really real. But all I remember is that sometimes I had some crazy good sessions after eating Oreos in the evening. Let's see if it pays off tomorrow. Not only Oreos, we are replicating the niece tactic, chestnut jam, rice cakes, chestnut jam. Okay, so everything is done, everything is ready, prepped. It's time to go to bed. See you tomorrow.
The day of the event, I woke up early and started to get everything ready. It's less of a hassle than an Ironman, there's less gear, but there's still a few things to do and check. Specifically, I had to check that I had all the mandatory gear. Having checked all that, having put the nutrition in my backpack, I attached my race number to my shirt and I headed down to the start area. As I got to the start area, the speaker was announcing that there were 20 minutes left to the start of the 50K. The sky was dark, the air was warm, and I was feeling a mix of determination, anticipation, and a bit of fear of the unknown. This was truly a completely new challenge for me. And the closer the start line got, the more the fact that I had never done something like this became a reality. I dropped off the post-race clothing bag, tied up my shoes, and headed into the starting area. As I made my way to the start line, I realized the first big mistake of the day. I had been distracted and I'd forgotten to fill up my soft flask with water. I was in disbelief. How could I have forgotten such an important thing? I was starting the race literally with no water, especially being that messing up my hydration could have had really harsh consequences. Anyway, I thought, it's the beginning of the race, I'm carved up and hydrated. I can make it to the first aid station, and then I'll go from there.
1 minute.
And before I knew it, we were off. The start was at 7 a.m. sharp, and I immediately got caught up starting a little too fast with the other guys, but I felt good. My heart rate was high, but my perceived effort was low. I was caught up in the adrenaline of the start. Running along the lake, some groups started forming, with the mega elite guys going way out front and us mere mortals running at a fairly hard but manageable pace behind them. After a couple of kilometers, the first climb began. Short climb, and here I started going up swiftly, following the others. It was a 250-meter climb, more or less, first asphalt and then trail. My heart rate was very high, it was skyrocketing, but I felt good, so I continued to climb. We reached the end of this climb and the descent began, in the dark and in the woods, with a steep trail made of 1,000 sharp stones and loose rocks. My headlamp was at a maximum intensity, but I was still going very slowly. I didn't really want to take any risks on the downhills. The most important thing for me was to get to the finish line today, without haste or particular ambitions. Twisting an ankle or falling at mile 6 isn't really a great idea. This, I think, could be a very good mindset, especially for a first attempt at the ultra distance. All the people I overtook on the way up climbing, on the way down, overtook me in return. If swimming is my weakness in Ironman, I realized immediately that descents are my swimming of ultra trail, my biggest weakness. As soon as we reached the flat, I realized that the only place where I could play to my advantage were the flats and the climbs. So I ran hard for a bit, for a couple of kilometers, in an area that wasn't that great. It was right next to a big road. But after a few kilometers, we got to a very steep mini climb, followed by a very steep descent. Here, I got picked up by a small group on the descent, to which I joined up. I tried to stay on their feet because they seemed more experienced than me, to be honest. "12 kilometers in, we arrived at the first aid station, and I filled up on salt and water. At this point, the first real steep climb of 5.5 kilometers started, followed by another couple of ramps. After another water stop at the base of this big climb, as there would be no more aid stations for quite some time, I headed out in front and set off alone, not really on purpose, but I just started walking, and then I started this monster climb. I climbed with a solid effort, keeping my heart rate below my threshold of 169, and I was joined pretty quickly by Andrea, a guy that was in the group with me before. Andrea was from the area, and he caught up with me halfway up the climb. And at that point, I started following him, exchanging a chat, but above all, basically taking advantage of the fact that he, being from the area, already knew this climb. So I switched off my brain for a bit and I simply followed his feet. We went up and up and up again. We passed a couple of people and we got up to a small flat piece on the side of the mountain, which was absolutely beautiful. This was the first point where the scenery opened up and you could see the two lakes below. It was pretty amazing and I tried to take it all in. It was early morning light and it was absolutely beautiful. At 19k in, we were almost at the top of the climb. Andrea was climbing with poles and he was basically sending it. A little too fast to me, but I hung on. I knew that once we reached the descent, he would be gone as I would be a lot slower. So I tried to take advantage of being with him to push a little bit faster. We continued to climb together for the last 300 meters and we reached the top of Mount Fayet. Here, the effort to me started to feel a bit hard. From here, after a short runnable section, I thanked Andrea for the help on the climb and he just disappeared quickly on the downhill. While I was still maintaining a very conservative attitude, paying attention to where I put my feet. The first part of this descent was a very steep and technical downhill. It was unbearable for me, to be honest. And I found it pretty boring. I still felt very good in terms of legs and head. I was eating and drinking, perhaps making a little bit too many caffeine gels because I had espresso at the start line from a bar, which might have been extremely strong. That was not a great idea, but I was feeling good. And when the descent became more runnable, I tried to go as fast as possible, especially on the few sections of the road. A couple of people overtook me, but they were from the 37k race, so they started 1 hour after us. And I arrived with one of these guys at an aid station where I filled up with electrolytes and coke. From here, I continued downhill through some villages, and every time someone from the 37k overtook me, I tried to stay and run with them for as long as possible, using them as a bit of motivation, and then letting them go when I felt that the intensity was too high. The first descent was really long as the climb. And when it finished, we were at 26 kilometers, exactly halfway to our destination. In that moment, I thought, these 26k have flown by. Only 26 more to go and 1,200 meters to climb. My legs were starting to feel a little stiff after having just descended 1,000 meters straight. I quickly realized that running hard downhill really takes its toll on the quads. But in the moment, I didn't really pay attention to it. I took a left and headed towards the second climb.
52 di qua?
Here I saw a sign that I never wanted to see. Vertical kilometer. Damn. The first part of the climb is 4.4 kilometers and is bang on 1,000 meters of elevation gain. So it is extremely steep. I started to climb, but I no longer had the physical or mental strength to climb like the first big ascent. I was alone and had no company to help me this time. Also, I was surrounded by forest, so there were no real spots to pinpoint or scenery to distract me. I kept on eating and drinking, and I passed a few of the competitors from the 81-kilometer race, cheering them on, but towards the middle of the climb, I started to see my energy really fade. I was really struggling to move quickly forward. I was feeling a bit lightheaded, and my legs were starting to hurt a lot. I drank the last drop of water that I had in my soft flask, and I tried to convince myself that everything will be fine. All you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. And yes, okay, that's true. One foot in front of the other will do it. But climbing such steep terrain is like having to pedal a bike uphill stuck in a very hard gear for 1 hour because this ascent was very long and continuous. It was an effort that I must admit I was neither used to nor probably prepared to sustain. Probably due to the fact that I started off a little too strong and maintained a too high pace power for the first climb.
Basta!
Also probably for a bit of lack of preparation. The climb is a mental and physical drain. It was starting to get really hot. My backpack was very heavy due to the high amount of mandatory equipment. I started cursing the extreme gradient and I just wanted it to be over. Honestly.
Man, this bit just sucks. It just sucks for no reason. It's vertical. At least now there's a bit of a view, but the first part was 1,000 meters in the woods. Couldn't see anything. It just sucked. Oh. So definitely don't do this when you do your first 50k. Don't choose this type of course.
That moment was truly a very formative experience. I had never experienced such a type of exhausting fatigue, and overall I found it to be boring and taxing mentally. I wanted something else, at least a bit of landscape to distract me from the pain. But finally, once the vertical kilometer was over, a very beautiful and somewhat runnable ridge began. And after running on flat for a little while, I headed up again. Here, an exposed ridge appeared in front of me, leading to Pizzo Pernice at 1,500 meters of elevation. It was absolutely beautiful. My mind here was reinvigorated by the views and nature overload. With still 330 meters to climb, an alternation of unreal steep slopes and flat sections began. Here I merged with some other participants of the 81 kilometer ultra who were maintaining a much slower pace and intensity. But honestly, after passing a couple of them, I didn't have any energy to go faster. I'm just focusing on getting to the summit at this point, no matter how or with what pace. Here the landscape really helped. Beautiful. On the left having the real Alps, high mountains, and on the right the two lakes. I filled my eyes and soul with the spectacular views, felt the gratitude to be able to do these things and to be there and taking in as much nature as possible, and I continued up the hill for the last 100 meter effort. This last effort felt really hard, but I was up top, finally. Here I met another competitor from the 52k. I turned around and I told him, "Man, I'm completely blasted." And he replied, "Me too," as he was putting away his trail running sticks. We laughed a little bit and I headed on, leaving him there sitting down. I thought he was going to catch me on the descent. Here I started to descend, still conservatively, but a little less at this point, as this was the last and final descent. This descent has a very beautiful and technical single track first section, which opens up and is exposed to the left over a different valley. Then a section afterwards in the woods, but that is runnable. I felt pretty exhausted. My legs exploded a little more with each step downhill, but mentally I was getting a bit of a second wind. 38 kilometers in, I thought, man, it would be nice if it just ended here. I would be golden. But there was still a half marathon to go. This thought, instead of being something bad, actually fueled me. If on the last climb I had ended up in a really bad place mentally, now I felt really good. I was happy and I was having a lot of fun, moving through nature with momentum and intention. Whenever I reached some downhill asphalt sections, I went absolutely full gas, as fast as I could. And then I would take it easy and stay safe on the trail sections. At this point, I had been alone for quite some time, neither overtaking nor being overtaken by anyone. And to be honest, I kind of liked the solitude and being able to do my own pace. I arrived at the final aid station at kilometer 44. 2/3 of the way down from the descent, and the volunteers hyped me up. I couldn't understand why. I filled up my electrolytes and Coke, I grabbed a banana, and they told me, "You're one of the first ones. I think in total 14 or 15 people have gone by." I got pretty excited at this point because I had no clue where I was standing in the positions. I left the aid station walking quickly and I headed towards my destination, knowing that from here on it was all downhill and then only a piece of flat at the end. Great, the hardest parts are done. It's almost over. Man, I was so wrong and I had no clue what was coming. The descent, after a stretch in the woods and villages and a river crossing, ended, and I found myself in some sort of a quarry where the flat section began. Here I started running as fast as I could, but I immediately realized that it was not going to be easy. My legs were blasted, and even my cardio at this point wasn't really cooperating fully, probably due to some underfueling. I could run for 2 or 3 minutes, but then I had to take a break to walk, drink and eat. I continued like this Until at some point, the biggest fail of the day occurred. I looked at the charge on my Garmin watch and it showed 4%. How the is this possible? The watch usually lasts me longer than 16, 17 hours. Well, I had left everything on. Backlight, precise GPS, notifications, telephone, true up, etc. Plus the route. The navigation feature really takes out a lot of battery from the watch. What a noob mistake. And I didn't even have a charger to charge the watch. So I saved, turned it off, and tracked the last section with my phone on Strava. What a noob. I ran the last section with the phone in my hand. Luckily, the course was well marked, so I didn't really need any navigation. I kept running without knowing the remaining distance and without having a really clear route to follow. Here, in these final last 5 kilometers, began one of the worst meltdowns I've ever had. I was seriously starting to rave. I no longer understood whether time and distance were passing or not. The surroundings were street or urban, so that wasn't really inspiring. And at one point where I thought I was going to go right, instead I had to go left, and that meant 1 extra kilometer at least along the entire promontory. That would have lengthened everything. Probably even more than 1 kilometer, probably 2 or 3 kilometers. But who knows how much? I couldn't know. Not having the total distance elapsed was playing mind games with me. And also, to be honest, not being used to running slow, as in running at real ultra pace on flat ground was a big hurdle. I couldn't really understand what pace I should sustain because I wanted to get to the finish line as fast as possible, but I couldn't do it with my usual pace. So I continued to do run-walk, but the run sections became increasingly shorter by a few seconds and the walk sections would gradually become longer. In that moment, I couldn't do anything more. I was really at my limit, and this was the fastest way to cover ground that I could come up with. I did my best to run and to try to figure out how much distance was left. I asked everyone I saw wearing an event t-shirt or volunteers and even a photographer how much is left until the finish line. 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, oh, less than a kilometer. It'll be about 1.5 kilometers. In succession, this was the answers that I got. In short, everyone had a different opinion. This lack of certainty really sent me in a complete tailspin. And what's more, I was feeling truly finished. I was very close to the finish line, but my legs felt toast. My heart rate was no longer cooperating. These final false flat and flat kilometers were also a huge struggle because I was looking at the time and I knew that a good goal would be to go sub 8 hours, but I was really cutting it fine. So I was doing my best to sneak under that sub 8. And at a certain point, I finally see a bell tower that I'd taken a photo of the day before. Here we are. But this bell tower never came closer. It always kind of stayed at the same spot. I made a left turn and I took the road that finally was where the finish line was. I made it. I could not believe it. I arrived at the finish line running again. Pumped up, quite destroyed, but feeling a lot better than just 2 kilometers prior. Feeling a really strong mix of emotions. This was a truly amazing experience. More than I expected. It was hard, fun, challenging, formative. It had it all. It had been a big adventure and I definitely got what I came here for. Pushing myself out of my comfort zone and growing. I got to the finish line in 8 hours and 4 minutes, just slightly above my sub 8 goal, but it was okay. As far as standing goes, I got in, I think 16th overall and 13th male. So I was fairly happy with how the day went, even performance-wise. This race had taken really a lot out of me, but I was extremely satisfied after the finish line and I was really enjoying that moment.
That was hard. That was really hard.
So now I would like to give you a rundown of the biggest things that I learned in my first ultra trail and the biggest mistakes that I made, because I think it could be very helpful if you're going to tackle the same challenge. By far, the biggest realization I had was that intensity is everything. And this has been reinforced by the more training and other events that I've done after this one. Regulating intensity is the most important thing. I got caught up and pushed way too hard on the first flat and the first climb, as well as going too hard on the road descent sections. Doing too much intensity on the climbs meant that I pushed the cardio system too much, depleting me in the first stages of the race, which impacted the latter stages. 50k is a baby ultra, it's the shortest distance, but it's still a very long way. Too much intensity on the downhills and likewise too much intensity on the downhills made it so my quads were absolutely destroyed. Way more than they should have been. Next time I will take the downhills easier in the first half of the race and maybe run them hard in the latter stages if I have energy left. And the same thing goes for the climbs. I will take the climbs easier in the first half, and then if I have energy left, I will send it in the second half of the race. Choosing the right race course. Another thing I realized super fast was I had chosen a race course that did not suit me at all. 3,000 meters climbing over 50k is a standard mountain ultra, so nothing spectacular, it's not a lot. But having all the climbing be on 2 huge ascents and subsequent 2 huge descents made it a lot more taxing, both on the heart and on the legs, because it is a continuous effort. Climbing for 1 hour, 1 hour and a half straight is a solid effort, and descending for 1 hour straight, even if slowly, still wrecks the legs more than descending for a bit, then alternating with some flat, maybe climbing again and then descending. Also, the second climb was a vertical kilometer, so 4.4 kilometers with 1,000 meters of elevation, which in and of itself is not an easy climb. So as a first 50k mountain race, I would choose something with more rolling terrain. Alternating between climbing, descending, flat, I think would take less of a toll on the legs. Also, this course being bordering some lakes, the terrain for the first 15 kilometers was pretty technical with very sharp rocks, which are very easy to roll an ankle on. And also some parts of the first ascent were like this. So choosing a race with the right terrain, I would recommend something a little bit easier. Maybe if you can find some flowy gravel tracks or even single track with no sharp or loose rocks, could be great, and it would make for a better experience. You can run a bit faster. Definitely, I would advise against choosing an elevation profile like this race. Do not do it. Running poles are fundamental. A huge mistake I made was not starting running immediately with running poles. I stupidly still don't know why I didn't think they could be of much help. Well, at the start line, almost everybody had them at this race. For a mountain ultra, they really help a ton. On the first climb with Andrea, he had poles and I didn't. He was going up much easier than me. I could see it. Running poles make it so you can have a good rhythm and you can apply more force with your arms, preserving the legs on the uphills and also a bit on the downhills. If there is one thing, well actually 2 things that you take away from this video, it's manage your intensity and run with running poles. They are so helpful. I wish I could go back and use them for this race. I now have done extensive more training and another event with collapsible running poles, and they are absolutely life-changing for preserving the legs and overall having a better experience. Watch battery economy. Navigating the route with the watch drains a ton of energy. I realized this 40 kilometers in, when it was too late. I'm using a Garmin 945, which usually lasts me a ton of hours. The battery this time lasted me 7 hours because I was navigating, but I had all the sensors on, my phone was connected, and the physio true-up metrics on. Be sure to switch them off. I would also recommend just carrying a small power bank and a Garmin cable so you can recharge the watch while you go. I've done this in training and it is extremely easy and it doesn't take much time for the watch to recharge fully. So just by carrying a small 40-gram power bank, you will get a full charge and not have this problem. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful in understanding maybe what you can expect to feel during your first 50k and maybe some mistakes that I made that you can avoid, maybe some things that I did right that you can take home from this. Like for instance, I would say that solid Ironman training is a very good base to take on a challenge like this without doing much or basically any specific preparation. Will you win it? No. But can you complete it? And can you be competitive? I came home 13th out of I think 70 or 80 people. So definitely not a bad performance, let's say. And that was off the back of basically no specific trail running prep. Ironman training is a great way to build a huge aerobic base and some form of speed that crosses over to ultra trail extremely well, without having too much impact on the joints. Even not proper Ironman training, but just switching it up between the bike and the run. So that is also something worth looking into as a training methodology. So if you're taking on your first 50k, your first ultra, I would say go for it. It is absolutely a great, awesome experience. I have nothing but positive things to say about it. This, for me, was a really great experience. And I can't wait to do other races like this. They really inspire me and are a great challenge. So definitely worth looking into if you want to take on something new. And maybe if you're doing Ironman, something a bit more inspiring nature-wise than the Ironman. Personally, now I'm training for my next event, which I'll reveal to you guys soon, but subscribe to the channel if you want to see what it is. And I'm doing 1 day on the bike, 1 day on the run. The run is almost always specific to trail running, so with climbing, while the bike is usually just climbing to train the cardio system to go for a long time. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next video.